the TIMFD podcast. Today is my favorite day is about appreciating every day as it comes, no matter what life throws at us. We hope that this podcast speaks to you. And if it does, please like, share, and comment. Now let's find out why today is our favorite day this week.
Hey everybody, we have a question for you. Are we honest in our relationships?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
I would say probably no for the most part, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. I brought Tonya here because Tonya is our expert in a lot of different areas when it comes to recovery.
Baby expert.
It comes to recovery. Yes. You've been doing recovery ministry for 15 years. So.
And I've been working on codependency on myself for years too.
And so Tonya has done that, but she's also, before we get going, I want to kind of have you hear what she's done within the church itself, so you kind of hear her understanding of a lot of different types of people. So when we first got this church going, you were involved with our children's ministry. You actually got our children's ministry off the ground and kind of built leaders, and then went into our middle school, high school, right? You got that going as well. Youth. You've done women's ministries. I think the only
small groups.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I've never done is men's ministry.
Men's ministry, because you've done all the administrative
side. They don't invite me to the men's breakfast. I don't know why.
No, she's pretty, but we can't have her there. But you've done from administrative stuff to the down and dirty stuff within Celebrate Recovery, and you've done it for a very long time. So Tonya understands, and she's been married to me, a type A that kind of runs around all over the place. So when my mom, just so you know, when we got married, my mom said something I thought that was real important. She said right after the marriage, right after the wedding ceremony, she came up to me, gave me a big hug, and said, "I'm so glad you married this woman." And I went, "Well, I hope you are, because it's already happened."
Too late now.
Yeah. And I said, "Well, why do you say it that way?" And she goes, "Well, not only is she pretty and nice, but she will tell you no." And that was very important for me. I never really had females other than my mom telling me no. I mean, I just hadn't. And you'll know what I mean by that as we go further in here. So let's go into this. Why are our relationships not real healthy? And I would say most of them. So what are some reasons why, and some of the big ones you see in Celebrate Recovery and in the church and outside the church, because you've been a business person too.
It's part of the human condition. And part of the human condition is denial. And that fuels compulsive behaviors like codependency, which is a really big one that I personally have had to work on. And I've seen a lot of people who come through CR who've also had to work on the same thing. And codependency is such a huge range of behaviors, beliefs, insecurities that it's many different behaviors. So it takes real time to learn it, and it takes time to identify it, and it takes time to become aware of it, so you can start working on replacing it in your life and stop living out of it as your way, your go-to reaction when you're dealing with others, or your problems or your crisis or things you're going through.
You know, one thing I noticed with when I'm just thinking of the guys that are just fighting alcohol or drugs or porn, and they finally overcome that, they're stopped drinking, they're stopped, and they may be a little bit white knuckling it, but at least they're getting through and they've been through a year. You know, one of the biggest things that I found, at least with the men, I don't know about the women, but with the men, is that they go, "No, now I'm clean of that. Now I'm having to deal with all these relationship things." And is that really where the codependency, denial, and stuff is?
Well, I feel like, and what I've seen over the years, I should say, with CR is people with addictions, a lot of times, your codependency, if you don't deal with it, it evolves. Your pattern of behaviors grow, and we learn how to cope with other behaviors when we're not able to cope with our relationships in a healthy way, or we don't know how to.
Right.
So we use other habits and usually try to medicate the feelings or emotions or suppress them or not think about them by using substances as a way to not deal with it. So when we do finally get over their addictions, they realize there's other issues they never dealt with that they now have the clear enough mind to do that. And
so that's what I thought that's
that
how
happens
it
a lot. We see that both men and women in CR.
Yeah. Okay. So women too.
Yes,
okay. I just knew within the men.
Nope.
Okay. And I don't lead anything in the men's ministry on the men's side of CR. I go to it, working on my junk. But so we have this codependent behavior going on. We know that we have these coping mechanisms: drugs, alcohol, porn, food.
If we let it go that far, yes. Otherwise, there's also a lot of us that just live out of our codependent behaviors. We just learn that's our way to cope and deal with people is by being codependent, like people pleasing, for example.
Explain that a bit. What's people pleasing?
At the core of codependency, I think it's rooted in the fact that we don't have a good self-image. We don't have a good self-worth of our view of ourselves. And so we try to find love, validation, acceptance, and a way to feel safe in our relationships through these behaviors. And we learn them in our childhood to try to fit in there and get along. Sometimes it's to survive our childhood. Sometimes it's, these are behaviors we picked up throughout our life, and they evolve, and we keep living out of them and just growing them and evolving them into all kinds of behaviors, from anger to people pleasing to controlling.
Would workaholism be that? Because
Overfunctioning.
You're trying to make everybody happy.
Overfunctioning to try to please everybody, to feel validated and worthy. Again, a lot of this goes back to our worthiness.
High academics going crazy just to try to get everybody.
A lot of perfectionists come out of not feeling valued or important enough or worthy, so they overachievers sometimes stem out of codependency, out of that need of to be validated. And so the root of it is our self-worth, our self-image, and that's why understanding and identifying our codependent behaviors is so important, because we can bring that to God and look at His Word and what His Word has to say about how we should be responding in our relationships with others instead of using these old behaviors.
So a verse, because I always like to have verses in this podcast, and I think you have one. What is it?
Yeah, Ephesians 4:25. It says, "Stop lying to each other. Tell the truth, for we are parts of each other. And when we lie to each other, we are hurting ourselves."
So are you saying that codependency, people pleasing, the denial is all, if we're going to be blunt, it's lying.
Yeah, it's a form of lying. It might be a white lie. It might not be a mean or malicious lie, but it's a self-protecting lie. It's how we continue to work on self-protecting ourselves to feel safe in our relationships or our problems or our struggles. And it keeps us from telling the truth to others. The person that gets hurt by that is us.
Is that like the silent treatment, I'm okay, leave me alone kind of a thing?
That could be. It's any kind of behavior where we don't communicate our needs, our wants, our feelings. We don't own our struggles. We try to own and fix other people's problems and feelings. It's just one way. We don't ever say no to them. We martyr all our needs and wants until we're an empty shell. Have nothing left to give to a relationship because we never spoke up and spoke the truth. And so we hurt ourselves in the long run when we live that way. And controlling behavior, that's another codependent behavior, because again, that's one about feeling safe. If you grew up or ever been in a relationship where you felt so powerless and unable or unsure how to cope and survive, you learn to shut down, you learn to try to be safe, and you become controlling because you try to control your environment to feel safe. And then we take that into our other relationships. And so there's, like I said, it's a huge topic. There's so much on. As a matter of fact, in CR, we have a codependency information pamphlet, and this has been.
That's right in the back.
Yeah, it's in the hallway here. But anybody could go buy books on codependency. There's so many great books out there too. But this one was really helpful for me because it named some of the fears, some of the beliefs, some of the values, some of the opinions, and the ways we act out of being codependent. So this really helped me.
Well, read a couple of them. Tell me what you think.
To help me identify some of mine. Well, some really important ones here. Assuming responsibility for others' feelings and behaviors,
stop there. What do you mean by that?
Assume responsibility. So it's like,
give me an example.
Well, for example, when Rebecca was in high school and we were struggling through her mental illness, and I was taking her to a psychiatrist every month to try to get her help, and she was rejecting it. And I kept assuming responsibility for all her actions, for all the poor things she did, for all the ways she would act out. And
it's easy as parents to want to do that.
It is, especially when it comes to your kids. And so I had a hard time separating my own feelings and emotions from the damaging effects of seeing her struggle through the mental illness.
And it was tough.
And I kept wanting to take responsibility and control her life and fix her life and rescue her from her mental illness. And none of that worked. None of that worked. And it left me in a big mess when 3 years into the process, when the psychiatrist finally told me to stop bringing her.
Yeah.
So
that was rough. When we heard that.
I hit bottom at that time because I didn't have anything else left to try or do.
And you tried everything.
I felt like I did.
So read another one. This is interesting. We'll come back. We'll do another time of this too, but we'll mess around with.
Well, because someone like we talked about tolerating mistreatment or abuse from others while justifying their behavior and trying to defend them.
So it's when
we minimize our feelings. So somebody mistreats us; they could be even mentally or emotionally abusing us.
Okay.
But we minimize what they're doing. That's not that bad what they said, or they didn't hit me that hard. That's minimizing an experience of what somebody did that was wrong. And we don't address it, and we minimize their behavior and tell ourselves it wasn't that bad. And then we dismiss our own heart. We dismiss taking care of protecting ourselves and making ourselves feel safe, because now we're going to feel unsafe. And so, again, it hurts us when we're not truthful.
And we have seen that over the years, since we've been doing this ministry. We have seen, especially with alcohol, and we see this with drugs too. But there'll be someone in the house that's drinking a lot. And they're fine at certain times, but when they drink or they drug, they change and they act poorly. They may even hit or yell at whoever the other person is, and the other person is becoming the problem because they're saying, it wasn't as bad, even though I got a bruise on me. It wasn't that bad, though I was really angry and I called you up and I can't stand this person right now because they're so mean to me. But then you're saying we justify it or minimize it. I guess minimize would be better.
Justifying it, minimizing it. Sometimes we also will use blame. We'll blame others for our problems or our issues instead of owning them for ourselves. I mean, there's different ways we can minimize our feelings and minimize the truth and not own the truth. And so owning the truth, this is what this verse is all about. We got to stop lying to ourselves too. We got to tell the truth to ourselves as well as other people. And learning how to speak the truth in love is a challenge. It is a process. And I'm not saying here, somebody hurts you, upsets you, run out there and when you're all riled up emotionally and tell them what you think. That's an indication to slow down, to practice maybe being in denial a little bit, go home, pray about it, do some research, get counsel if you need it, to know what is a healthy response. Yes. A lot of times people that are codependent, what we really struggle with is boundaries. We have no boundaries.
And don't they let it go so long that eventually they do blow up?
Yes.
A lot of times we see that too.
Yep.
And then they're just being in the same place as the other person who's causing damage to them.
Well, that goes back to the control. When we find out that we've waited so long or we held on for so long, hoping that they'll change if we just wait long enough and don't say anything, that they'll change. But eventually it becomes upsetting. We resent them, we blow up because they're not.
Let's read another one. These are interesting.
Directly or indirectly attempting to fix, manage, or control another person's problems to help them avoid feeling bad or experiencing the consequences of their choices. And we kind of talked about that with Rebecca. That was me. I was trying to fix, manage, and control her problems with her mental illness for 3 years. And I didn't want her to feel bad about it. I wanted her to be able to embrace it, learn how to live with it, and manage it herself. But and I didn't want to experience the consequences of it, but that wasn't. Helping.
When I went through cancer, you struggled a bit a little bit in this area too, and there's a reason for it. I was not doing well, and can you kind of talk about that a bit? Because there's a lot of people right now, even in our church, are dealing with spouses that are having health issues. Yeah. And that's hard. And it could be any age. You could have somebody getting sick and having major problems. We've buried people that were in their 20s or even in their teens out of health issues.
Right.
Can you kind of expound on that a little bit?
Yeah. So when you went through your cancer and you came home 23 days later from the hospital and you lost 30 pounds, you couldn't keep food in, you could barely eat, and you looked like death warmed over. So I was now living with this new fear every night when I had to look at you because of how pale you were, weak
gaunt.
and frail.
It was ugly.
Very gaunt.
That.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I thought he survived the cancer surgery, but I don't know if he's going to survive the recovery because of how long it took for your body to learn how to accept food again, and how weak it made you every night as you struggled with that. And so I didn't know, but that fueled my fears. Fears that I was going to lose you, fear it's going to be abandoned and left behind, that you weren't going to make it. So I had all these fears running amok, but I wasn't in touch with them. And so I instead tried to control everything about you. I controlled your food. I kept trying different diets. I controlled your vitamins. I controlled your work schedule, your exercise schedule. When I finally let you go back to the gym, I was controlling to death everything because I was so fearful, and I just didn't realize it, that to the point that I don't know. I think I did for 2 or 3 months. And then one night I got really upset and I blew up on you. And we were doing all these things I thought should be helping you, making you better, making you feel better. And then you kept getting sick anyway. Yep. Every night you kept getting sick. Didn't matter what we tried. Didn't matter what diet we tried, what food we tried. Nothing. Didn't matter. Yeah. And so I finally, because I had to keep going to work, so I wasn't home with you all day.
It was frustrating for me too. I was just kind of
part of it was I didn't know what you were doing at home during the day. So in my mind, I'm like, now blame me. I go to Dave. What are you doing when I'm not home? You have to be eating something you're not supposed to. I was blaming you and shaming you for staying sick, and because everything I'm doing should be making you better, and it wasn't.
Yeah, I got that.
And so. I remember when I blew up on you and had that meltdown of blaming you for having this ongoing issue with your body not healing and recovering like we had thought it would or should. That's when it got my attention.
Yeah.
That's when my anger, I'm like, there's no reason for me to be angry. I get it. Why? I finally got it. I'm like, I am not trusting the Lord for your health. Or for my future.
Right.
I am trying to control your health and my future.
And you did a fine job of it.
I thought I was.
You did.
I thought I was.
You did. But I know it wasn't healthy for you.
It wasn't. Yeah. And I had to start surrendering some of the behaviors or choices, I should call it, to you. Yeah. I started saying to you, you eat what you want today. You go do what you want today. Right. If you want to go to work today, I had to start letting it go and releasing it and just letting you make your choices and figure out what you needed to do for yourself, because I realized controlling you wasn't.
Well, it was killing you off doing that. It wasn't healthy for you.
And it wasn't changing anything.
No.
And ultimately, it was going to take time.
Yep.
We're so used to. You've had back surgery. I've had neck surgery.
Yep.
I mean, you go to the hospital, you get these surgeries done. They send you home the same day. Now, obviously, you're in the hospital longer for the cancer, but you think that, you recover, you're back to work within a week or two, and, and slowly getting back into other things in life within 4 to 6 weeks. And this was going on for months. Yeah. And so it just totally affected me way differently than I expected.
So now that we've talked about a little bit about denial, we can come to this again. I've already had a couple of people are going to come back just because we've had people ask, and I'm sure we're going to have people ask about this. So we've talked a little bit about denial, a little bit about codependency, a little bit about the people pleasing. Mm-hmm. So what did you do? And I guess it would be with Rebecca or myself or whatever the situation was for you. What have you done to at least address it and then overcome it? Because we will relapse. I mean, that's part of life. We're gonna get triggered by things.
Well, they're compulsive behaviors, so they can come back easily and be triggered for us to react out of them.
So what would you suggest to somebody?
Well, first you got to grow your awareness. So if you know nothing about codependency, that means you know nothing about boundaries, because all codependents, we struggle with boundaries. That's our problem. We struggle with boundaries. We don't know how to make them. We don't know what a healthy boundary is. We don't even know how to communicate them. So first we got to learn. So for me, I came to CR. That's what was my beginning here in
Celebrate
CR.
Recovery.
Celebrate Recovery. Thank you. And that was my beginning to grow my awareness. I found this information pamphlet, started reading it.
I remember that. You were all into that. I remember that.
And I remember when I told my first sponsor, my first mentor in the program, that I'm not codependent. My husband's codependent. He's a people pleaser.
I am.
But not me.
Except I've been overcoming that.
You have. But it took me a year before I found these pamphlets. I didn't know we had these or that these existed when I first came to CR. So a year later, I found it and I read it and I was like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
I'm a codependent.
I'm codependent too. What's up with that? So going to CR, I had to grow my awareness. Yeah. And having a place where we could talk about it, I can work on it, I can identify it, and reading these pamphlets helped me, and then working the program. Going to counseling. I've had to go do a lot of therapy. It's one thing to recognize, and I became more aware through CR of my codependent behaviors, but then it was like, so now what do I do? How do I set that boundary, or how do I have that conversation? And so then I went to therapy. I added counseling to it, to go to somebody healthy to teach me how to be healthy in setting boundaries.
So that's the humble yourself.
Yeah.
There's James 4:10, humble yourself before the Lord and he will lift you up. There's a little bit of humility here.
Oh, total.
Because you have to be able to.
You have to own it. You have to own that you're codependent, you have unhealthy compulsive behaviors, and you want God to change them.
Well, the first principle in CR, realize I am not God. I'm powerless to control my tendency to do the wrong thing, and my life's unmanageable. That's probably the hardest thing for people who are first coming. And they also think they got it together.
Yeah.
I mean, if people saw you walking into church or walking in business, because you're a businesswoman, most people think you got it together. When they first see it, they think you got it together, and there's
don't judge a book by its cover.
No problems whatsoever, but when they start talking to you, you're honest with them. You tell them, hey, these are struggles of mine.
Yeah.
And we all struggle with them. You know, I noticed with people pleasing, and maybe you can help me with this. So codependency, people pleasing. So the codependent, you were aggressive in it. You were more of controlling the situation.
Yeah.
My people pleasing was I was a doormat and just try to do everything for everybody.
Yes, that's the wide spectrum. That's how wide the spectrum.
You guys see that?
Codependency
It's
is
crazy.
From people pleasing, never saying no, always saying yes to everybody's request. You know, never expressing your needs or want or asking for help.
Not at all. I didn't do it at all.
I know.
It was horrible.
And to the opposite extreme, to wanting to feel safe, that we go to controlling and anger when we can't get that safe feeling around us in our relationships or our circumstances. And then we can go the opposite extreme.
Well, and this is the beauty of human beings.
Yeah.
None of us have it all together. We know Romans 3:23 says all sin and fall short of the glory of God. So we're all dysfunctional at one point or another. Does this, when we look at ourselves, and I just want to kind of hear from you because you've been leading this for so long. I'm a male. I'm struggling a little bit, but I'm a little embarrassed about showing up to like a Celebrate Recovery or go to counseling. You know, does that for a lot of men, it shows weakness. What do you say about that? If I am a guy that's going, man, that's just being weak. What would you say about that to a male or a female that's thinking that's a weak thing?
I'm trying to decide if I want to say what I'm really thinking or if I should say it nicer.
No, don't say it nicer.
Oh, I'd say man up.
Man up.
Man up.
Okay. And can you explain that a little bit?
Well, so we all
if
have.
I was coming in seriously.
The truth is, we all have insecurities and fears.
Yes.
That really stems out of insecurities and fears. Yes. What else am I going to discover, or what else am I going to have to divulge about me or what I've done, and what would people think if they really knew? A lot
Fear
of it's
about
fears.
Getting hurt.
Well, there's a lot of fears associated with being honest and speaking the truth because we fear being again. All this is rooted in self-worth, self-image, and when we fear we won't be validated, loved, or accepted, and we're going to get rejected or kicked out or looked at differently, attacked, that keeps us stuck in our compulsive behaviors. That'll keep us stuck being codependent. Okay. And so it's rooted in them not feeling or having fears or insecurities. And so we just have to encourage them. That's why in CR, we teach, speak about your experience. What have you done? What has God helped you do? Don't go give advice. It's not our job to be counselors. We're not counselors there, but we could talk about what we learned and what we have done. Got it. And so I encourage those in CR who have done the work to encourage others with the work they've done. That's, I think, the best example of what we can use, that God can use in us, is our own journey, our own story, our own overcoming. I think we all have testimonies of overcoming a lot of different things, especially for those who've been coming to CR for a long time. And they have many different issues. They could encourage and inspire people that it is okay, that this is a safe place, this is a safe program. Plus, we have a church that's DNA is built around being authentic and real. So we create an environment here that even when you come to church here, that's encouraged and seen.
A very imperfect church, but
yes.
But we are just full of a bunch of imperfect people.
Yes, and that's the beauty of CR too, is because as we're learning our unhealthy behaviors and working on untangling ourselves from them and replacing them, we got a place to practice them. Okay. And so we get to practice on each other. And sometimes we mess up, and sometimes, but then we get to practice making amends, right? And going and, gosh, I said that the wrong way. That's not what I meant, and clean up our messes. We get to practice.
Yeah, because we don't have anything. Behaviors. We don't have it all together. No one does.
Nobody
Only
does.
Jesus does. And it's about just being honest with ourselves, with God, and someone we trust, or people that we trust, right? You always say that all the time.
Otherwise, the choice, I believe, is 2 Peter 2:19.
Okay.
It says, they promise them freedom while they themselves are slaves of destructive habits. For we are slaves of anything that has conquered us. Yeah. So we have to decide, are we going to live with the compulsive behaviors that we have allowed to conquer us? Yeah. Or are we going to stop being a slave to it and invite God in to help us change it? And a lot of people don't know how to where to begin working on that and doing that. And you could go to therapy.
Yeah, and that's a good thing.
People go to counseling. Please. Yeah, they could go to therapy and do the same thing. Or they could come into Celebrate, like a program like Celebrate Recovery, and begin working on themselves in there. But it takes work. It takes time. It takes dedication. It's not overnight.
It takes humility.
And it takes humility, yes. But they'll see other people be humble in there. Absolutely. I think that's easy for most people. I think people are hungry for honesty and authenticity, and that they're looking for that because they want to be that, but they haven't found it, and they're looking for a place to live that.
Well, we've ran out of time already.
Okay.
This is how fast it's gone. So if you don't mind, I'll bring you back a different time. Is that cool? So thank you guys for being here. We want to get you going here. Remember, yes, all of our relationships have problems. We all struggle. We're all unhealthy because denial, codependency, the people-pleasing, control, all that kind of junk. But we can overcome it. And thank you for being on here and helping
come check us out in CR.
Bye, guys.
Have a good day.
Thank you for listening to TIMFD, Today is My Favorite Day. Views, comments, and opinions are those of the host and guest alone, and Dave and Sam are solely responsible for the content of this podcast. TIMFD is produced and directed by Alex Korn. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, live intentionally, and be very blessed.